Oh, I was supposed to find out. We had research assistants available, but I was supposed to find out. I'm sending a note right now. How many, if we're still collecting resumes or not. And Sonia showed up. Great. Welcome, everybody. If you're coming in, I turned off the waiting room. So
I've been here.
Something right here.
Wait, John doesn't have a jersey?
He had a background instead.
I got one next to me when I'm still eating lunch.
Okay. I have to have some constancy in my academic Zooms.
Sure.
Yeah, Devin, I've been trying to think about like what the NNIP t-shirt exchange photo looks like. We'll have to
Could be a collage. It would be great.
Yeah, if you all turn on your camera on Zoom, you can do a screenshot.
Who was telling us that they wanted people to pose and be smiling? Caroline, was that you? I forget. Somebody had a Zoom participation event where everybody was looking and smiling.
Yeah, that might have been me. We did a baby shower on Zoom and we had everyone with the matching background and had everyone actually look at the camera and smile instead of when you like creepily take a picture. It's much more effective.
It's good to know. This is my new park. This is the Metro. They just reopened a nice park at the at my Metro station with activated space, like little cute red chairs that get moved around and environmental planters and stage that they're building for music and performances. We're very excited.
It looks nice. Are you actually broadcasting live from there, Kathy?
No, I decided to stay in it. That's trying to do this outside probably would add a level of conflicting. Plus, right now there's I think religious people with big amplifiers there now too. That would be make it add another element to the meeting that we don't probably need.
That's true. Makes sense.
But if we need an entertainment, we're still brainstorming fun, Caroline. This week
you're supposed to tell everybody that.
Right. Well, normally we were at an in-person meeting, we would just start recruiting people to help. So okay, I just sent the note about our job list. Oh, excellent. Maybe I can just move to Milwaukee, Katie.
You get the t-shirt.
I have the t-shirt, so I'm.
What else?
Milwaukee, for me is always, we used to just go there for fun from Chicago suburbs. So it's just associated in my mind with Summerfest and the zoo and fighting with my sisters and family outings and
the last in-person NNIP meeting.
And the last amazing in-person successful. You also had brilliant weather.
That was nice. I had a good time at that meeting.
Milwaukee's always a good time.
I think the best thing about Milwaukee was the little marshmallow peep diorama at the sausage place.
You have a picture? I don't remember that. I mean, I think I went to the sausage place.
Better to forget.
I'll look for a picture.
I'll check my files too, Bob. I'll see if I've got one.
I can't remember the neighborhood tours. Where did we go?
There was one by the river. We went by the water and saw.
Yeah, the Harbor District, I think, or Walker's Point, which was one of our turning the corner neighborhoods. And then we did, I think, Lindsay Heights, where there was a juice bar and an orchard, like economic development thing. And I can't remember the third one.
So funny. I can't remember it either.
The before time.
Okay, let's go back again. That was a good one.
Anybody want to lobby hard for our next in-person meeting at their city?
We have a rule of every 10 years, right?
Roughly, yeah.
Is Mariko on here? Let's go to Seattle.
Yeah, I don't think she's joined yet.
Trying to get the West Coast.
Yeah, we should.
I was advocating for Memphis.
Oh, I would go to Memphis.
Orleans,
We never go anywhere.
Why? You should. Hawaii is doing amazing data work. So both
Yeah.
expensive and at the beach. So I'm thinking about, that's one of my, anyway, in the like next year, thinking about domestic vacations.
Can we go to New Orleans? I love some beignets.
Oh yeah. I have my research associate was just there last week. That was his first post-vaccination trip. Is Jeff here? Jeff went to the Virgin Islands for 10 days. He needs to tell us about his vacation. Anybody else that has vacation so far?
We should do an NNIP river cruise that starts in Memphis and then ends in New Orleans.
Oh.
That is a good idea.
Sounds real sloppy, guys.
It depends. I feel like there's those, I don't know, what's that? There's a company that does those river cruises that seem very staid. I think it's mainly, targeting the over 75 group, but I was on a very drunken river boat cruise with data librarians once. You laugh, but it's true.
Those data librarians know how to party. I'm not being facetious. They do.
No, yeah. It was a network. I don't know if it still exists. Does anybody know? Our librarian friends, iAssist, it was called.
Heard of it. I'm not sure if I've ever been to that one.
I was really into metadata for a couple of years. So we spent, they were fun people though. They had a lot of rituals in their meetings. Like they had this scepter that got passed from city to city, and
maybe we need some of that.
A goat.
The NNIP mascot.
Could be. Just seems like when there's rituals, there's usually a goat involved.
Not even sure where to go with that. We must be attending different kinds of rituals.
We'll bring it up with the librarians next time we get together.
Yeah, we'll have to I could get re-hooked into the librarian world. Welcome, it's nice to see new names on the list.
I have the picture of the PEEP diorama, but I'm not Zoom savvy, so I don't know how to put it in the chat.
Oh,
Anyone help?
Hold on. Do you have it, Bert? Do you have it?
I'm on it.
I have it on my machine, or I could just hold up my phone and you can look at it that way.
No, I got it. Just wait a minute. I'm getting there.
All right.
Oh, I
Thanks,
can't.
Bob.
Somebody make me a co-host. I don't think like I'm a co-host.
Okay, so you can see it now. Let me get out of the way.
Oh, nice. As your background. That's clever. Yeah.
So what is the diorama of?
Peeps
It
in a
was
sausage shop.
Usinger's sausage shop, and it was a diorama of the shop inside the shop made of marshmallow peeps.
Very meta.
It was really, yeah, it was impressive. It's the kind of thing you just don't expect to stumble into, but when you do, you're just blown away.
Just a plug for people to vote for camp sessions happening tomorrow or suggest new sessions. Put the bit.ly in the chat.
I find it easy to believe that Bob would gravitate towards dioramas. Anywhere on the planet.
I don't know.
They follow you around, Bob.
That, I mean, I've got my butter sculpture background. I've got Pillsbury Doughboys. So yeah, it's kind of, and I have carp.
Sort of a dying art. I mean, it's my favorite part when I go to a public museum, especially Milwaukee's public museum, you know, the dioramas, to really see how they were crafted with the paintings in the background. And I think it's a pretty special thing. Hate to go the way of, you know, digital world where you just plug in and learn about the buffalo.
I'm trying to find, I can't find it on, of course, when I'm in hurry on Google, but the Census Bureau had a very good diorama too, but I think it was maybe for the 2010 census. I was trying to find it. If I find it later, I will share it on the, I'm not going to remember what year. You would think Census Bureau, there wouldn't be a lot of options for Census Bureau peep dioramas, right? But there are. Or that Google could answer that question for me.
I'd like to do more crafts, but I can't. I'm just kind of tired of dioramas for a while.
Need to break.
Yeah, I'm really into door refinishing right now.
Practical home improvement part, or do you feel like that's an art form?
No, it's just I'm tired of looking at these doors, so I figured after close to 20 years in this house, I might as well just pull them off and do them one by one.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We're gonna we put this chat time early so that we could start right on time, because we, of course, no matter how much we try to cut, we tend to overpack these times in person and virtually. So, hi, Scott. How's Albuquerque?
It's beautiful. I'm getting blooms on my roses now, and they are coming in spectacularly well. So that's a big mood lifter. And overall, things are going along fine. We've got a couple projects, one with Department of Health to go ahead and do an environmental survey and epidemiological surveillance for location of opioid use and the placement of Noxolin dispensaries to do a gap analysis. And then we've got another project in the hopper with DFA concerning eviction money that they're trying to get out the door. So we're going to be working with them to identify potential awardees.
That's exciting. You should I think lots of folks have Memphis. I remember it comes to mind immediately, but about helping prioritize the eviction assistance money.
Okay, I would love to talk to whoever is involved in that, because we're just ramping up right now, and I need as many effective ideas as possible.
Yeah, that reminds me. I'll need to start like a to-do box note to people that, and Urban has a tool too that's more generic with national data, but other people improved it with local data, of course.
Okay, I'll be in touch with you.
And Scott, this is Sonia. Sonia, this is Scott. Sonia lives in Albuquerque too.
Ah. Back in Houston, but Lovely's in Albuquerque.
My son lives in Houston.
Look at that. Do you have any other people? I'm also from Puerto Rico. Do you have people there?
Actually, one of my faculty friends from UNM, Nancy,
There you go.
is
Connection.
from Puerto Rico.
Now that's a good potential meeting location is San Juan. Let's do that. Get a data partner down there.
I'm all here for bringing a Puerto Rico partner on board.
I actually just had a half an hour. I don't know if there's anybody here from participated in Forward Cities. Rob is here. I just had to have an hour conversation about a potential Puerto Rico project that I haven't even had a chance to tell Sonia about. And I mentioned the hope of an NNIP Puerto Rico partner at some point.
We will all help you explore.
I know.
We'll all go start knocking on doors.
I'm happy to share the fun of. I think there's plenty of work to be done. Has anybody been on Whova for other conferences before? They want to chime in about how hard or easy it was.
Tips for use.
It was a last minute decision, so.
We're going to try out the network tables feature at the end of this at 3:30. So that will be in Whova.
Kathy, I joined the Best Start conference that you were on. That was on Whova.
Oh yeah, that was on Whova.
Yeah, and it was a lot harder than this, I thought.
There's more moving pieces, I think.
This one I've just been able to click watch it on desktop because it's during the workday. I think that helps a lot because then you can be nimble.
One of the we aren't going to ask this during the welcome, but if people wanted to put in the chat what's their current favorite data set into part of our tradition. I've been we've been trying to push to get Humda out, Rob and I, a track level data Humda file out. So close, Rob.
Kathy, do we need to do any sound checks for people?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Sharon, you sound good.
Okay. All right. Great. Thanks.
Vaishnavi, are you there? Is she there? I'm looking. It's up. I'm clicking ask to unmute.
You're muted right now.
Hi, I'm here.
Oh, great.
You're the wrong screen.
And you, a beautiful photo of Philly. Bonus points. Anthony's in his fancy corner office. Looks very corporate.
Yeah, that's just my background. I should have changed it. I forgot to change it to a Dallas one. I should find
No,
one.
that's okay. I was just wondering if that was really your nice office.
No, of course not. I do get a lot of compliments on it though, people who do think it's real, because it does kind of look like something that might occur in Dallas, and so people are like, oh, or depending on like how big their screen is, they think I'm in like a screened in patio or something, and they're like, oh, I really like your porch. And it's like, oh, thanks. But
they can just, I think it's good. It's like, it just gives the suggestion that you're really important. So people.
Of course, that's what I'm going for.
Hey, but he does have a Dallas hat on, so that counts.
I do have a Dallas hat. I went and put that on so that I could represent.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it has the skyline on it. So
Dan said the 2-on-1 data. If you think of it, Sonia put the 2-on-1 blog. Dan contributed to the 2-on-1 blog that we put out a couple of months ago with that Camille worked on. And several people have been moving on 2-on-1 data since then, I know. Oh yeah, I forget the data sharing agreement. You can thank Leah for that. Or I forget where the original came from.
Oh, is it in that blog? Because I was just going to ask if anybody's had challenges with working with their 211 data folks and building that relationship. If anyone has experience to share.
It took us a while in Pittsburgh, but we finally had progress. It was a lot of like waiting for their technology to catch up to us and what we needed.
Yeah, that's part of it. To them, it feels really cumbersome to pull the data out of their systems, which may just be a technology gap.
And there's a vendor that we worked with that supports our United Way, that supports a lot of others, and we have like scripts running now that pull data from that vendor. I don't know. I'd have to look at my notes, which are probably non-existent, to see what other communities or states they support.
Yeah, check in and we can send you. There's examples too of the interactives and analysis people have done. So I think Leah's tagging me to get ready. We had not tested sharing my screen, so hopefully this works. Welcome everyone to virtual NNIP month. Thank you everyone for showing up so early and having such a great turnout. We really appreciate the participation and just, as you know, missed everyone. So we're glad to see everybody's face. And let me, I will share my screen. I'm not sure how to just share PowerPoint, Leah. I'm not going to do that. Excellent. We had about 130 people registered, so that we saw the silver lining of being virtual too, is that we had many more people attend and participate than we would have had at an in-person meeting. So we're glad and thinking about ways to take advantage of that with people with more specialty knowledge and examples. All right, here's what we're going to do today. The first half an hour, we're doing a little bit of welcome and passing it on and announcing our network awards. Then Sonia has put together an amazing lineup for the NNIP Showcase. Those are 5-minute fast presentations. And we left a little bit of time for questions. And then Leah, we're going to be experimenting. Leah's been working on experimentation with the Whova network tables to meet some more people to kick off the month before we get started. So here's us, just in case the video wasn't working. The top line are folks who are actively on the NNIP team. Camille Anol from our, who was on the team earlier, went to a great job at the Council for Large Public Housing agencies a couple of weeks ago. So we've pulled in a bunch of great people from the DC team and from our Robert Wood Johnson team and other colleagues to help throughout the month on the bottom row. So you'll be seeing them throughout camp and running panels and helping with their expertise too. We decided, thank you for some of you were also on the intro to NNIP session yesterday, which we do have a recording of, but for those of you who we don't know yet, Urban Institute is the home of NNIP. We always be clear to say that the local partners founded NNIP, but we host and coordinate the network, and it works so well because both the mission of using evidence to improve communities is so well aligned. And there's a lot of resources that we can, from our fantastic colleagues across all kinds of centers that we hope to share with you across the month. So let's figure out who's here today. Leah, if you can launch the polls. I think I'm a host, so I can't vote. That's sad. So what type of organization are you in? And with the abbreviated poll set of the our traditional set of how many NNIP partners you've attended. Usually we have a meetings.
Yeah, it was a little hard to classify first time attendee for this because there's so many virtual events we've had over the last year, but All right, I'm going to endpoint, share results.
A lot of university folks, nonprofits, in the 2 to 3. So we have lots of experienced folks on the call, but welcome to those of you who haven't been in a meeting before. And definitely this is NNIP month is new to us, and we are as usual, building it as we go along. So feedback about other things to do during the month or how to run these sessions is very, very welcome. So I'm going to close this, go back. I think we weren't sure if there would be some friends of the network here today. So we wanted to make sure that we shared the NNIP mission that the partners and many of the potential partners share. And we want to have a special welcome for anybody here from Memphis, our newest city that we were excited to welcome in January. And for those of you new to NNIP, these are the kinds of activities that NNIP partners undertake, both the sort of the crunching and transforming and the data development side, but also sharing the most important part about sharing it with the stakeholders. And you'll hear some really great stories today at the Idea Showcase, and then building the ecosystem. And I think our Impact Award is a really good example of that. So you'll see this come to life both today and throughout the month. We love our executive committee members. They're elected partners that serve periodic terms. They are the ones that told us that nobody wants to sit through 16 straight hours of virtual conferences and Zooms. So they wanted a mix of formats and topics across the month to reconnect and to bring new people in. And has been really instrumental. You'll see them throughout the month also, and as sounding boards and in playing various roles, helping out in the sessions. And so there'll be NNIP folks. Here's the guest cities that have been signed up already that are interested in NNIP in one way or another. And we have a bunch of friends of the network coming, AISP, the Federal Reserve, the Public Health Institutes run DASH from Robert Wood Johnson, and the Metro Lab Network, which runs a great city network too. And a special thanks to the KC Foundation. They are a funder for our operations and for the general support at NNIP, which has made this possible. All right, this is the sales pitch for a little bit of commercial time for the events coming up this week, this month. I sent an email Monday giving a little more description of these to pay attention in particular to next week. We have a great, amazing, dynamic speaker from the NAACP Legal Defense Fund talk about algorithmic decision making and what it means for our communities, and whether it's criminal justice or housing or child welfare, and then what roles NNIP partners can play in understanding the sort of what's happening and how communities should get involved and ask questions. And then John Schwabish, who is our fantastic colleague, he's a DataViz national expert, and he has a new guide coming out next week or something like that. He has a blog already on incorporating equity into DataViz, and then has much more to share during the training too next Thursday. And you can see the other ones too. So you can add it to your agenda on Whova and download the calendar appointment. We've tried to build in some social time that we're still playing out, but for partners in guest cities, Leah's given you Buddy Coffee to meet somebody new. The deadline for the t-shirt exchange is tomorrow evening. This is where you give a local t-shirt, send a local t-shirt to someone and get one in return. Liz Monk, I think, is the founding or maybe Eleanor, Tut are founding creators of that tradition. A couple of happy hours that accommodate all time zones, and some small group lunches that we'll share more information about as it gets closer. All right. So Rob has been amazing jumping in to help us with camp. And this is our, I should have put draft at the top. This is our tentative camp schedule for tomorrow, Wednesday, May 5th. And we wanted to get a sense of who was interested in what. And not all these facilitators have been confirmed. Some of them were appointed. So I'll flag that if you are surprised to see your name on there. And Leah, if you want to launch the poll, if you could just answer this if you might attend tomorrow. So if you're not attending tomorrow, then your opinion is less helpful right now. But some of these could be repeated if these were a block of session ones and communication channels like social media, newsletters, the whole kit and caboodle. Leah has some new ideas on how we should approach racial equity as a network that she wants to share. Bob's doing some amazing work with his team on affordable housing data, a lot of HUD data sources. And Amy has agreed to sit in on the virtual community engagement to help facilitate that conversation based on the really strong work they've done in Milwaukee. And the bottom one, I think we have, the collaboration on technology. Bob sent some notes on the Google group about that earlier. Grassroots work from our friends in Hartford. And the airing of grievances, which is a traditional, very, very informal session, confidential session about what's driving you most crazy at the moment. I don't know, how would you, if anybody else wants to put in the chat how to describe that, they can chime in.
All right, I'm gonna close the polling.
And Leah, does this save or do you need to take a photo? I forget.
I can download.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. This helps us. Anybody can attend, even if you haven't signed up yet. We just wanted to get a poll to see if things were very uneven, but it looks like things are pretty good shape.
And Susan asked if we're recording the sessions. We are, but likely just for note-taking purposes, and they wouldn't be posted since they're just informal discussions.
Fantastic. So we're moving to the great part of the presentation. I haven't really been paying attention at the time, about network awards. And we're gonna start with the Network Steward of the Year Award presented. Vaishnavi's gonna talk a little bit about Laura McKernan's contributions. So I think if you can.
Yeah, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. The Network Steward Award was created several years ago to recognize outstanding contributions to NNIP's network that helped to strengthen connections among partners, increase knowledge sharing within the network, and raise NNIP's profile nationally. And this year, I'm so excited to present the Network Steward Award to Laura. Laura's presentation and template for calculating lives saved during COVID-19 stay-at-home orders at the start of the pandemic was extremely valuable to our work at the Urban Health Collaborative. We, through our West Philly Promise Neighborhood project, were able to recreate the infographics for our own city. And then we also created the graphics nationally for other cities with our partnership with the Big Cities Health Coalition. We received so much positive feedback from our member health departments. In fact, they reached out to us specifically to help them create this for them. And the health commissioners for many of these health departments continued to cite the resource months later. It was truly a unique and valuable way for us to share some positive messaging during a challenging time for public health. And so while that's a high profile example, Laura has also participated in field development and peer learning through 3 cross-site projects in 2020 for Census 2020, Data for Healthier Communities, and Youth Engagement. And The Urban Institute staff modeled their community data capacity framework on Laura's What It Takes for a Community to Be Good at Data, using it as inspiration for their own brief. There are many other examples that partners can share, whether benefiting from her chiming in the Google group or taking a one-on-one conversation. Feel free to share in the chat. The NNIP network wouldn't be as strong as it is without Laura's commitment. And we thank Laura for being so generous with her time and expertise, especially during this difficult year.
And I think Laura, if she's here, I can't tell all of them.
She is here.
Hi.
How are you?
It's good to see you.
She's here and she's not going to miss an opportunity to talk. So thank you so much for this award. I'm going to start with true confessions that I've always been jealous of partners that know about cool things like housing and transportation and displacement. Despite the doctorate, I actually find health kind of boring. But when COVID and our little Live Safe PDF hit, I thought, boy, if I can't be helpful right now, I ain't never going to be helpful. The fact is, though, that NNIP's helped me and see now so much more than the other way around. And I want to talk a little bit about how, because I think for a lot of staff, and maybe they're not the ones on this Zoom, and so it's wasted. But I think for especially for the newer ones, that network's kind of an abstract concept, and they don't really get why they should be part of it. And obviously the network helps in ways like learning about new methods and data sources and ways to connect with your community. Cross-site projects open doors for learning and contributing to the field, new funding sources, national exposure. And individual relationships mean there's always a place to go with those really embarrassingly remedial questions that you'd never be willing to put out on a Google group or listserv. And y'all are probably like me in that NNIP is the one place on the planet where I don't have to try to explain what we do or why. But finally, if we're honest, and I think especially in the last year, for most of us, there's days when it all feels really heavy. You're just tired in your heart and bones, and you feel like society's lost all interest in even working from a common set of facts as best we can know them. Another African American's been murdered, or another woman's been sexually assaulted, or another family's been evicted, and your data didn't prevent it. And you're struggling through your workday, like trying to write code or write proposals or manually scooting infographic images around on a page. And it's hard because you're not really sure any of it makes any difference at all. But the friends that you make here and the work you're doing help you remember that what we're doing does matter. I think the people in the work that are in NNIP help us all keep pushing, and the world needs us to keep pushing. And the world also needs us to have fun and snort laughing. And for me anyway, NNIP is good for that too. But like a bank account, none of this exists without all of you making deposits into it. And I know we're not all coming from the same place. Some of us feel like this is a movement, and for others of us, it's an honorable way to pay the rent. And neither one of those is right or wrong. But if you're not already engaged, I just want to ask you to figure out how to help somebody else in some other city. Get on the Google group and respond to a question, present in a showcase, share your untidy code, risk something, invest something. I promise you someone can benefit from something you have to offer. And those of you who know me well know that I have a really internal locus of control, and so this attention feels kind of squiggly. Georgia O'Keeffe quote sums it up pretty well for me. She said, "I've already settled it for myself, so flattery and criticism go down the same drain. But this award from this group, and for this reason, means a lot to me, and so do y'all. So thank you again."
Happy. Thank you very much to both of you. It's nice to be able to step back and thank people. And I have the honor of presenting the next award, the G. Thomas Kingsley Impact Award, which annually recognizes a partner for their extraordinary contributions in using neighborhood data to improve policy and practice to benefit people with low incomes and communities of color. And the award is given in honor of Tom Kingsley, who launched NNIP in Urban in 1995 and served as the director for 2 decades. He was a champion for the power of local data for community change and would have loved to see all the partner examples for those. Many thanks to those of you who applied. And we're going to get all those stories out. The winner, as it says here, is the Western Pennsylvania Regional Data Center, Bob Graddick and his team at the University of Pittsburgh for their work in supporting the Black Equity Coalition. And many thanks to Dr. Tiffany Gary Webb, who provided the reference for them. We can't wait for you to hear the whole story, but a couple of nuggets that to listen about how the coalition came together organically last spring, as Laura said, sort of in a crisis to motivated by the desire for more information and to take action on the disparities that we were all seeing highlighted by COVID. They formed a data committee to support the agenda of the broader group, which met twice a week for more than a year and is still meeting, and really bringing together several data and technology groups along with the folks that had a focus on health equity to determine data access priorities and advocacy needs together. It was an amazing collaborative effort. And in addition to the data and analytics support, you'd expect that WPRDC provided, interactive maps, data from their open data portal. Really, they played a critical role as a connector, building on their work of the past several years that you all know about strengthening the data ecosystem to bring data and technology groups to the table. And therefore, they were really ready to launch when the need arose in such urgency last spring. The coalition pressed their county and state health departments for more complete data disaggregated by race. So now only 12% of the case records omit race compared to 37% statewide. And then they also produced maps to demonstrate that testing sites weren't located where African-American people lived, as well as maps of potential community locations like the community clinics and subsidized housing. So after being presented with the evidence, the county and local health insurance providers added COVID testing sites in the community settings. They had done the ask before and looked, on the social justice, equity, principles, but having the data really made a difference. And since then, per capita testing rates among Black residents are higher than white residents since this new strategy. So there were a lot more examples. We can't wait. Sonia's going to help writing up the story. I think the most important thing and why the committee was so impressed too is Dr. Gary Webb's testimony of her belief that the coalition and its data efforts was really beyond helping on these particular things, was really changing the culture around equity and social change in the Pittsburgh area, shifting more power to Black leaders with the support of white allies. And their work's not done. They're talking more a latest vaccination report and thinking more about broader health equity issues. So for that, I will present the award this year to Bob Graddick and his team, in addition to the whole coalition, all those folks that were really instrumental in the Black Equity Coalition.
Yeah, thanks. Is this time to say something now?
If you'd like to say something, you can.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's really weird to take to accept this award on behalf of a bigger group of collaborators that's really come together over the past year. And one of the key people involved with that is Dr. Tiffany Gary Webb, who's with us today. I just want to make sure that she has a chance to say hi and share a little bit more about what we've been doing together.
Sure. Thank you, Bob. And thank you everyone for this award. It's an honor to be a part of it. It's an honor to work with Bob and the Western Pennsylvania Regional Data Center. Kathy talked a little bit about our coalition, so I won't repeat that, but I do want to say that we have a number of different working groups in our coalition. So we have a leadership group, we have a community engagement group, we have a community health group. And the data working group, which you've heard about here, has been instrumental in really helping all of those groups. So I resonated with the comment that Laura just made. The data is making a difference. And our coalition has been taking a data to action approach with respect to a number of different issues. You heard about the testing. We've also been working on equitable vaccine distribution, working on providing data for the eviction moratorium policies. And so the data is critical in helping not only the other groups, that the physicians and their practices and the policymakers, but really the whole coalition as a whole. And so I just wanted to say thank you, and also thank you to Bob, because having allies, I mean, for our region in the Pittsburgh and vicinity has a long way to go for equity, to achieve equity. And so, Bob saw some of the pushback that Black leaders were getting in trying to get some of this work done. And really, we were there to save lives, and we were, operating as volunteers. And so, him using his ally and his connections to be able to get some of that work done was really instrumental and had a great impact on the coalition. And I'd like to say that working with us too probably had a profound impact on him and his work and how he will operate moving forward. So thank you, and I'd like to turn it back over to Bob.
Oh, yeah, thanks so much. That's really great. It's been great to be part of this group effort. And, just wanted to say that there are a lot of people involved, not just in our organization, but within our organization, Liz, Steve, David, for doing a lot of the background work that I bring to the meetings. And a lot of our partners from Carnegie Mellon and a lot of our other organizations have been, as involved as we have. But I think just like having an award named after Tom and taking that, having known Tom for about 10 years is really special. And I think it's really nice to have this award and kind of see the examples that our friends in Minnesota, Cleveland, Charlotte, and Oakland have done winning this in previous years. But I think just what I took away from Tom and knowing Tom and this group is just the importance of democratizing data and using data to challenge power dynamics and hold people accountable. This is something I've really learned over the past year. Kind of read about it, but until you really do it and you see how to do it and kind of the reaction that people have to friends like Tiffany can be really powerful, just to be at the table and see it from a different perspective. And one of the second things I learned from Tom and the group here has just been the need to work in partnership. Partnership is key. It's the currency that keeps it all going. And then working with other people in your ecosystem, like a lot of our members of our data group, we've learned that through our projects. You don't have to do it all. You can make sure that you share credit with everybody else. And that's great, because everybody has strengths. Everybody, has a role to play. And I think thinking about how you kind of can conduct those relationships on that within that ecosystem is really important. And then the third piece of it, I think that I take away from NNIP is just the vital role for infrastructure. Thinking about technology and the data, but also the infrastructure that has to do with people and the skills that they can bring is also an important thing not to forget about. So I just wanted to say thanks to everybody. Thanks, Tiffany, for your partnership on this. And thanks everybody at NNIP. It's really nice to be part of this amazing network.
Ray. That is fantastic. And we have the plaques memorializing the awards coming to Bob and Laura.
Yeah, I have it.
Oh, good, it came.
It came on a day when it rained.
Show us, Bob.
Yeah. There we go. So see that? It's made out to Pitt because I figured we could share it that way.
You can share it. Fantastic. Thank you so much. It has been a really challenging year, so it is so nice to start off our month with thank yous and celebration of accomplishments. So now we're switching to the next part of the showcase. We have been so grateful to have Sonia join us in our center last summer and get more involved with NNIP through the fall. And many of you know her through the Robert Wood Johnson grants too. So now we can't imagine the time before her. So I will turn it over to Sonia to introduce the Idea Showcase folks. And I have a list of them on the next slide, Sonia, whenever you're ready.
Perfect. Thank you. That was really nice. I am really excited that we get to do the Idea Showcase on racial equity right after these awards, because I think despite how hard of a year it's been for all of us and for our communities, we've all been really doing the work. And we have 4 excellent presentations highlighting a little bit of that racial equity work that has been going on in the network. So I'm excited for that. If you're newer to the Idea Showcase model, basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to have 4 5-minute presentations back to back. The idea is that they're rapid fire. And at the end, we'll be taking questions. Of course, be sure to put your questions in the chat, and then we'll be taking them at the end. Also, if you really like this model, I'll push the May 25th Idea Showcase as well, where we'll have another set of presentations where we'll have 6 people from the network presenting. And with that, I think we can see who's presenting today. So next slide. Great. So here are our 4 presentations. First, we're going to have Andrew from Charlotte presenting on voter registration and other data to track intra-county mobility and possible displacement. Then we'll have Sharon from Indianapolis addressing neighborhood public safety inequities through data-informed investment. Then we'll have Ellie from Los Angeles talking about revisiting public safety in 2020 and thinking about crime data differently. And finally, we'll have Connor from Boston presenting on racial disparities in the proximity to vehicle air pollution. So with that, I'm going to get Andrew's presentation up and we're going to get started.
So Sonia, I should stop sharing.
Yes, please.
All right. If we can make this transition seamless, it'll be amazing.
Is this my official sound check?
Yeah, there we go.
All right.
Yes, that works.
Oh, I like the green.
Yeah, we can thank corporate communications for that. So am I safe to assume that the 20 seconds have started already?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so I'm Andrew Bowen of City of Charlotte, just going to talk a little bit today about how I used voter data to kind of enhance some of the data work we've already done about looking at neighborhoods, neighborhood change specifically, and high risk for displacement neighborhoods. All right, so what I'm going to talk about today is really what we're tackling, how we're tackling it programmatically, and how I've added in voting data to really look at the movement of residents across the county, and how we can possibly tie all of this in together to kind of enhance some of the work we're doing. And the map you're looking at is the ratio of residents who I've identified as not white alone. So essentially, Charlotte, we've got a lot of rapid development infill, tons of in-migration. We have displacement risk and high rates of neighborhood change, both of which very much elevated in communities of color. And we're always working on affordable housing preservation and new construction of affordable housing, and those do have equity and mobility contexts with them. So the Housing Trust Fund is a $50 million fund that we use neighborhood change assessment to identify where to put $50 million of bond funds. We have the comprehensive plan, which looks at displacement risk for our 2040 planning comprehensive plan. And we also have done some things with aging in place, where we've given grants for seniors to be able to stay in their houses. So first, neighborhood change is an assessment we've done that compares neighborhoods to other neighborhoods. And it's heavily reliant on looking at building permit activity and home sales activity and prices. And the map is just showing areas that have been experiencing high rates of neighborhood change across the city and county. And the displacement risk that's used in the comprehensive plan, that's really looking at neighborhoods compared to the city at large in poverty, education, age, people of color, and home ownership. So the interesting piece is when you actually put both of these together, you get the areas of the highest risk, which are very high neighborhood change scores and very high displacement risk scores. So these have lower rates of college graduates, lower household income, more people of color, and enormous activity in the housing market. So now what I did was I took the 2016 and 2020 voter data and basically said, I'm going to create a time series and look at who's moving into these high areas of risk and who's moving out of these high areas of risk. Then this is us using individual data to tie neighborhood conditions to actual people and see what we need to do in the next interventions and programs that we can use to address equity. So the map on the left is the location that people moved to, by and large, that lived in these areas of high risk in 2016. And the map on the right is the areas of people that moved from a different place and into one of these areas of high risk. And I should note that these maps are at least 30 people in each of those neighborhoods, and that covered about half of the movement. So this is the racial breakdown of the people who lived in one of those areas of high risk, and so by age and by race and where they went. And the interesting thing here is they've become more suburban and moved to areas a little bit farther out than the urban core. And this is the map of where people moved from and into one of these high areas of risk. And most of these people are moving in from areas filled with young apartment dwellers. And that's what that red circle is down there just south of the center of our city. So the net change of all of these of the demographics in these areas, I've highlighted the pieces that are interesting. These areas have lost people of color and gained younger residents. So the highlight here is that about 20% of residents in these areas moved within this set of neighborhoods. And so the real question is, when people are moving, where are they actually moving to? So all you need to know really from these box and whisker plots is that people are moving from areas of extremely concentrated displacement risk and high levels of neighborhood change to areas of still high levels of both. They are not moving to more stable neighborhoods. And that is a thing that we can actually use this data to get ahead of. So here we can track movement to these areas that I'm going to say are next in high rates of displacement and neighborhood change. And then we can also use this and see how we can get more data that's on the individual level, like food and nutrition services, tax information, and more building information, and continue to monitor this stuff that's happening in neighborhoods and its impact on the residents. And then we can actually intervene, because there are people who move into and out of neighborhoods by choice, and there are people, and for every action, of course, there's an equal and opposite reaction. There are displacement pressures, and we need to understand why people are moving to places and from places and what's keeping them. And unfortunately, voting data is some of the best we've got, and it's still dirty, but it can also be used to help tie neighborhoods to people, and may the fourth be with you.
Oh, you're the first person to say that. Excellent timing.
Thank you.
I forgot
So
about
much.
it.
Just think of all that data cleaning time. Just wrapped up in 5 minutes.
That was most of my winter. No, not winter, but it felt that way.
Excellent. Wow, that was very impressive. Thank you so much for kicking us off. So next we're going to have Sharon from the Pula Center, and I'm going to try to give you better warning this time. So give me like 2 seconds. I'll say go, and then you can go. Let's see. Okay, ready, set, go.
Oh, that's not mine.
Oh,
I mean, that could make for an interesting presentation, but that's not quite it.
Nope.
That does not count against your time.
I clicked on the wrong one. Sorry, everyone. I knew this was going to happen.
Maybe that's the happy hour activity, Kathy. We'll switch presentations.
I need another drink or two before
There's a name for that. There's a name. Does somebody remember the name for that game where you have to give a cold battle decks? Thank you, Rob. Of course you would know it. You have to give a talk to a totally ridiculous PowerPoint presentation. Sonia, we could do Ellie first if you want to flip it, if you can't find Sharon's.
Nope, it took me a few clicks, but we're here. All right, try again.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. I'm Sharon Kandros, Associate Director at the Pula Center in Indianapolis, and our mission is to collaborate to define, measure, and actively improve community health, well-being, and resiliency. Our Savvy program aligns with NNIP's mission to democratize data and build capacity to use information to advance well-being and equity across neighborhoods. With a population of about 965,000, the county is divided into 25 city county council districts. And the council historically has distributed grant funds equally across districts, but it wanted to change to an equitable allocation model, putting more, putting more funding where it's needed most. And with violent crimes increasing 22% in the past 5 years, and the recognition that some neighborhoods are more impacted by others, the council specifically wanted to address these disparities by equitably investing $1.2 million in public safety grants, focusing on grassroots crime prevention and reduction efforts, looking at addressing factors related to increasing violence. So we really kind of took two approaches. One was to inform decisions about where to allocate funds. So we created a district level model that looks at a variety of factors, and I'm going to walk through that, share those findings and disseminate it. But we also wanted to inform decisions about spending within the districts once they knew how much funding that they had. So our model takes into account, wanted to develop a model that looks at measuring the need for violence reduction, specifically where are those communities that were disproportionately had disproportionately higher crimes with intersected with those communities that are already socioeconomically disadvantaged. So those neighborhoods are more likely to experience violence, but also less resistant to trauma. So the first set of factors that we looked at in our model were social determinants of violence. And these are the ones we picked are based on what the literature suggests about social determinants. You can see those listed here. So the social determinants piece had two parts of the model. So neighborhood disadvantage, the second piece of that was looking at neighborhood segregation. So there's been multiple studies that show both income segregation and race segregation in large cities are predictive of violent crime rates, particularly they're likely markers of generations of unremediated structural discrimination. So we built two elements into the model that focused on that. Then we had to kind of standardize, these are different variables. We had to standardize them and calculated a score and index and rank ordered each of the districts. So we used a percentile ranking. So you can see like in this case, District 13 had far exceedingly high unemployment rates. So they would get 100%. And then District 1 had much lower rates, so it ranked much lower. So we added up all those standardized scores for each of the factors in the model and added them up, and then added that into that as well. We added the racial segregation and income segregation to it. So we get a total social determinant of violence score, and then created a percentile rank for each of those. So each district then had a percentile rank score. When you see those kind of compared to each other, it lets you, really kind of understand how each district compares. So District 1, for example, the first one highlighted on the bottom was in the 33rd percentile for the social determinants. And then District 13, that we saw with that huge unemployment rate, was at the top, is the 100th percentile. So it was, had a higher score than every single other district in the county. So we also mapped these out so we could see, by district, how that plays out. And you can definitely see there's a lot of disproportionate effects here in some inequities that exist. We also did the same thing for violent crime scores. We did the percentile ranking. So the second part of the model was looking at the violent crime rate. Rank ordering those, you can see District 13 kind of drops down a little bit. District 1 actually moves up, so it had a little bit higher crime rate, but it had the lower social determinant score. So once we had that, we also mapped the crime rate score, and you can see a pretty similar pattern, although there are different hotspots that come up on this map than on the social determinants map. So it's really important to layer those two together to get kind of a comprehensive index score that we could use in helping the council to measure the way that they wanted to spend their funding. So we added those together, came up with this total overall crime index score, rank ordered those. And so this final index is what the council used to map out how they wanted to allocate the funding by district. So you can see the two districts we've been following along the whole way. District 1 ended up with a total at 38th percentile, and District 2 dropped down to second place and at the 96th percentile. That's still pretty far up there. And when you map that out, you can see, I mean, 13 on the north, kind of the near northeast part of the city. It's, you know, in the hotspot for both of those parts of the model. District 1 is in the far northwest corner of the county. It was one of those that fell in the lower part of the index. So we wanted to, so what the council did was they directly used our index value to determine how much funding would go to each district. So those in the bottom 5 of the index received 20,000 each, and those in the top 5 received 80,000, and then it was kind of distributed, relatively to the other districts as well. So to use that information, we wanted to provide additional data to help them prioritize how they spent their funding, each of the districts. We created district-specific reports that gave them all the data that went into the model, so they could see where they may want to focus their investment in these prevention and reduction efforts, and helped them think about priorities within that. Once that, in addition to helping to create data-informed decisions and policy and funding allocations, this has really served as a model going forward. So just last month, the council and the community foundation and the city just announced a new program. It's called the Council District Crime Prevention Program, where they're using this model, the funding and the priorities that each of the counselors created based on all this data to allocate additional dollars going forward in a new funding program.
Yes, excellent. Thank you. What I really liked about your presentation was also the intervention into the perception of what violent crime is and the addition of social determinants of health and equitable allocation of resources, I think is super important. So great job. Okay, so Ellie, I probably gave you a heart attack earlier, but now it's your turn. So give me 1 second and then I'll let you go.
Can everybody hear me? Cool.
Okay, ready, go.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Ellie Shane from Los Angeles, and today I'm going to be presenting on our criminal justice data initiative. I'm going to share some of our year 1 findings, give you guys a little sneak peek at some new years of data, and talk a little bit about future directions for the project. So this project is a part of Neighborhood Data for Social Change, which is our online public resource for that we provide for Los Angeles County for neighborhood data. And NBSD launched in 2017 with a pretty limited set of public safety data, basically only crimes. So in 2019, we embarked on the Criminal Justice Data Initiative to give folks some more data resources sort of around public safety. And this project really had 2 main components. We kind of analyzed quantitative trends in police activity from LAPD, and we also held a number of listening sessions to get community input on the data and to discuss the topic of public safety together in a data-informed way. And I think one of the things that was really important for us on this project was engaging both law enforcement and community members and community-based organizations to hear where there are differences in opinions about public safety and also where they share some common ground. So at the beginning of every listening session, we asked folks to define public safety. And this word cloud here shows sort of a summary of everyone's answers. And I think it's worth noting that stakeholders from different groups kind of had some shared themes to their answers that were different. So law enforcement definitions kind of shared themes like transparency and teamwork. Folks from nonprofits and other local governments talked a lot about built environment and economic opportunity. And residents in over-policed communities really reflected on their experience with the police and shared themes like criminalization of poverty and sort of the desire for investment in community programs rather than police. And I think across all of these groups, it's worth noting that people shared some common themes too in their definitions, a lot about sort of intangible elements like community belonging and opportunities to thrive and be free. And I think those shared themes were really important grounding for us as we sort of talk together about some of the data that I'm going to show you now. And so the data that I want to share with you today, we're going to look at geographic disparities, and we're going to be looking at the South LA area. Just for a little bit of context, this is a group of neighborhoods with about 800,000 people, and 95% of those folks identify as Black or Latinx. And so the data that I want to share with you today is around police-initiated contact. And so that means sort of vehicle or pedestrian stops by police. And so what we're looking at in this graph is stops over time in South LA versus the rest of the city. And so you guys can see stops are sort of consistently higher in South LA. That's, I think, one important thing to note. Also, in recent years, there's sort of been this big increase in South LA in stops where there's sort of a leveling off in the rest of the city. And I think when we showed this data to South LA residents, they were obviously not surprised at all. They felt like this was really a reflection of their lived experience. And they talked a lot about the psychological toll that over-policing takes on a geographic area. And I think that's really important to uplift. But I think that one of our most important findings is that for people of color, and most especially for Black folks, sort of regardless of what community they're in and what the demographics of that community are, Black folks in LA are 3 to 5 times more likely to get stopped or arrested than white or Latino folks across everywhere in LA. There we go. There it is. All right. So, so this graph is showing the sort of disparities in stop and arrest rates for Black, Latino, and white folks. And it is an average of the data from 2011 to 2018, just sort of for ease of viewing. But what I think that this average doesn't show that's important to uplift is that the disparities are actually sort of increasing over time and really getting worse. So it's important to note the disparities and important to note that they're not actually getting any better. And so we did take a look at these data points sort of in our next year of data. So now I'll just kind of share a little bit about where we're going. And our initial finding is that from this year during COVID, stops and arrests decreased drastically, but the racial disparities within those police activities that we looked at on the last slide remained totally unchanged. So I think that's really important to uplift. And I think it's also important to uplift that people actually called the police more during COVID, even though we were in this lockdown. So I think given the sort of unwavering and seemingly increasing kind of racism at the hands of police and the increase in calls to police, this question that we're hoping to tackle as a community this year is sort of why folks are calling the police and if it's always important to do so. Thank you very much.
Awesome, great job. I think this is a topic that is on all of our minds. I think it is really important also sometimes to remind ourselves that the trends aren't always improving and to question why that's the case. And that's a really helpful frame to have when we encounter folks who are kind of perhaps newer to data and just kind of assume that racism, segregation, violent policing is something in the past. So great. Last but not least, we have Connor next from MAPC, Metropolitan Area Planning Council. Give me 1 second. We're going to do it one last time.
Everyone's doing so great. I'm so impressed.
Folks can hear me okay?
Yep.
Great.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, thank you. So this is from a project we sort of put together last year or kind of earlier on in the pandemic. We were interested in looking, having sort of seen the immediate and sort of emphasized disparities in the impacts of COVID-19 on people of color, in particular the hospitalization rates, the sort of the serious illness and the higher death rates. We wanted to look at the co-location of the residents of color in our region with vehicle air pollution, which is associated with some of the comorbidities and the pre-existing conditions, which also at the time we were seeing were correlated very strongly with these increased risks of severe illness with COVID. You know, cardiac and pulmonary disease, diabetes, other sort of inflammatory illnesses. which, pre-COVID, there's already been, an established literature that these conditions are both more prevalent in communities of color, and that these conditions are correlated with exposure to a variety of environmental factors, including, particulate matter emissions. And so in our region, we have a pretty good sense of where the emissions of these pollutants are occurring. We obviously know where our residents live and the demographics of our residents. And so we were interested in putting together kind of an analysis of how these co-locate. And I'm pretty sure I had expected the slide to have changed by now. So if you could cheat me forward, I wouldn't mind.
And you may not know that she can move you forward. There you go.
Thank you. So yeah, in particular, the pollutant we were interested in, it's not a regulated pollutant. A lot of people talk about PM 2.5, but in fact, ultrafine particulates are kind of this rising culprit, specifically around inflammation-related diseases and cardiac and pulmonary illnesses. And it's associated primarily in the United States with vehicle air pollution emissions, mostly diesel vehicles. So it's much smaller particulate matter. They penetrate further into your lungs, and they generate inflammation that tends to lead to a variety of these conditions. So we had this existing inventory of data that we had built several years ago for our region, which didn't model the ultrafines, but it modeled nitrogen oxides, which are essentially very strongly correlated with ultrafines. They kind of share the diesel vehicle source as their major source. So we basically ran this analysis, joining together the location of these emissions and the location of our populations at a very high resolution. The thing about ultrafines is they tend to really fall away in concentration once you get more than a couple hundred meters from the road. So we were focusing in on the populations living, really close to these major roadways. And we gridded it all up and we scored it into an index. It's essentially the quintiles, 1 to 5 of the highest, lowest, highest intensity of these emissions at the roadway level. And then we summarized based on the demographics of the 2010 census that we had. And so this is looking by race and ethnicity across the region. The far right column is our regional average. And you can see kind of the immediate and not entirely surprising results that, less than 30% of the white population lives in these most polluted areas, whereas anywhere from 45 to 55% of our residents of color are living in the areas that have the highest concentrations of these particulate emissions. And if you add up, the top 2 highest categories, it becomes an even sort of starker difference. And the regional average, it kind of falls in between, but it's a significant, shift for the residents of color. This is kind of the other side of the coin. This is, if you look at the areas themselves, going from left to right, you just see this increasing trend as, and in particular, the Latino populations just grow in their share of the populations living in these areas. Now, this isn't just because residents of color in our region live in dense population areas. Controlling for that, we see the same trend, basically in surplus of their share of the regional population. As you go to the more polluted areas of this index, you see increasing numbers of residents of color living in these communities. This is not a fluke of nature. It's not a quirk, right? This is a function of historical inequities and systemic inequities in how we've, characterized land use in our area, how we've done planning decisions around affordable housing development, even where we've cited our freeways and, in particular in communities of color. But there's a couple upsides, which is because this is in some sense a highly localized impact. We can target neighborhoods, we can target the areas that are most heavily exposed. We can do retrofitting. We can ensure the construction of new buildings requires higher levels of air filtration in the HVAC systems. We can attempt to expand access to affordable housing in areas that are further from high polluting roads. And then, more broadly speaking, this still fits into our sort of statewide efforts to green the transportation system, which as much as possible, we're trying to maintain a real core equity focus on the impacts of electrification in our transportation system, to try to make sure that we're getting the benefits from that electrification targeted towards the communities that kind of need it the most and have the most historic inequitable impacts. The data is all available on the website, and the report, and there's an extensive technical documentation, and we're happy to share our experience on this.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you. Good job, everyone. Round of applause. That was very impressive to do in a virtual setting. And I think all of those were super interesting and fascinating. Now is the time for questions. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just I think we can take maybe 1 or 2 questions if there's burning ones, but but we're also running a little late. So if people, but I think Laura had one for Sharon, so we can answer that and then maybe move to the small tables. If you have other questions, these are all great topics too that could be camp sessions for later on.
Prod, everyone. Yeah. All right, so question. Did you get pushback from either residents or policymakers on either the data or the resulting allocations? And this is for you, Sharon.
So we collaborated with the council and a few stakeholders on, building the model. So they were involved in, the data we included, how we, built that and helped to refine it, and, were involved in the interpretation of the results. So that certainly helped get that buy-in from the policymakers. I will say, the committee itself was led by the caucus. So there was, I think any pushback that was seen was more of just political, rather than just actually questioning the data itself. It was, who was, questioning was more about, who was presenting the ideas, and rather than, questioning the results themselves. So I think most people were open and excited to start using data to be informed, and was very eye-opening to see some of the information revealing what some of the inequities that people knew existed, but just the notion and the concept of using data to make equitable decisions, I think people embrace generally. And there, just the way the forums work, there wasn't really I didn't notice any pushback other than that was on that.
Great.
But I will say it was the first time that the council had made a decision based on data and funding, allocating their funding based on that. And I'm so excited because they're using this as a model going forward, as I mentioned. So it was a big win.
Yeah, it's fun. Once you have a precedent of, I feel like it's April Urban on here. Anyway, we had a discussion before about the need about equal allocation amongst political districts before. It doesn't represent need. Fantastic. So
I think you share the slide and I'll give a quick intro.
Yes, I'm going.
We're going to try out an experiment since we're in the Whova platform. They have a feature called Network Table. And if you're in Whova, you can see that on the left there, we've circled it. And it actually says the session is going to start now. So you will see on there an option to grab a seat. So you need to click on grab a seat before we start the session, and it will randomly sort you into a table with 4 other people, and you'll have 10 minutes to introduce yourself and share something you're excited about working on. And then it is going to randomly reshuffle you after 10 minutes, and we'll repeat, so each person will appear at 3 tables. If you choose to exit the session, this is not like Zoom, you will not be able to re-enter the session. But those are the major details about how to join. So if
Leah, so we need to close out of Zoom and go to Whova.
That's right. Everybody will need to close out of Zoom and go to Whova and grab a seat, because it will be a video session within Whova.
All right, thanks, Leah. So everyone, you can copy that link or go to the Whova platform, and we'll see you there. Stop.